The summer sun beat down on the small neighborhood park as Mike Holloway checked his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. His daughter Lily had begged to stay just a little longer on the swings, and he never could say no to her on her birthday. 8 years old today. How had time gone by so fast? "Dad, watch me go super high," Lily called out, her dark pigtails flying as she pumped her legs on the swing. Mike waved, shielding his eyes from the sun with his other hand. "I see you, birthday girl. 10 more minutes, then we need to head home for cake." Lily's face lit up at the mention of cake. Mike smiled to himself. The small ice cream stand at the edge of the park had just opened, and he thought a pre-cake treat might make this birthday even more special. "Lily," he called, walking closer to the swings. "I'm going to grab us some ice cream cones. Stay right here on the swings, okay? I can see you from the stand, and I'll be back in 2 minutes." "Chocolate with sprinkles," Lily shouted back, still pumping her legs. "You got it, kiddo." Mike walked briskly to the ice cream stand, joining the short line. He kept glancing back, watching Lily's colorful birthday t-shirt as she swung higher and higher. He paid for the cones and turned around, carefully balancing the dripping treats. But the swing was empty. At first, he didn't worry. Kids jumped off swings all the time to run to the slide or the monkey bars. His eyes scanned the playground equipment. No sign of the bright pink shirt or bouncing pigtails. "Lily," he called, walking quickly back to the playground. "Lily, where are you? Your ice cream's melting." No answer. The chocolate cone slipped from his fingers, splattering on the concrete path as Mike broke into a run. "Lily!" he shouted, panic rising in his chest. He circled the playground, checked behind trees, looked under the picnic tables. A woman pushing a stroller noticed his frantic searching. "Everything okay?" she asked. "My daughter," Mike said, trying to keep his voice steady. 8 years old, dark hair and pigtails, pink birthday shirt. "Did you see where she went?" The woman shook her head. "I just got here. Maybe she went to the bathroom." Mike sprinted to the park's public restrooms, calling Lily's name. He even asked a teenage girl to check the women's restroom for him. Nothing. 15 minutes later, Mike's hands trembled as he dialed 911 on his phone. "My daughter is missing," he told the dispatcher, his voice cracking. "I only turned away for 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes. The police arrived quickly. They cordoned off the area, took Mike's statement, and began interviewing everyone at the park. An officer walked Mike back through every moment before Lily's disappearance. Another officer radioed in Lily's description to patrol cars in the area. "We have officers checking a 2-mile radius," explained Officer Chen, a kind-faced woman who seemed to understand Mike's growing desperation. "Is there any chance she tried to walk home? Or could she have gone with a friend or family member?" Mike shook his head. "We don't live close enough for her to walk, and everyone she knows is coming to our house later for her party." His voice broke on the word party. The cake he'd spent hours decorating with Lily's favorite cartoon. Characters would still be sitting on the kitchen counter, waiting. As the sun began to set, more officers arrived. They brought search dogs who sniffed Lily's jacket that Mike had in his car. The dogs led them to the parking lot and then lost the scent. "I want to see the security footage," Mike insisted, pointing to a camera mounted on the park's maintenance building. "That camera covers part of the parking lot. If someone took her—" He couldn't finish the sentence. After what seemed like hours, a detective showed Mike grainy footage from the security camera. There, at the edge of the frame, was a small figure in a pink shirt being led by a taller person toward a car. The angle was bad, the resolution worse. The adult figure wore a baseball cap pulled low, and their back was to the camera. "That's her," Mike whispered, pointing at the screen with a shaking finger. "That's Lily's shirt. She wouldn't go with a stranger. She knows better." "Sometimes children can be tricked," the detective said gently. "Did anyone unusual approach you or Lily recently? Anyone ask questions about your routines or show too much interest?" Mike racked his brain, trying to think through the fog of panic. "Nope, I don't think so. We come to this park all the time. Everyone knows us here." As night fell, the police set up floodlights. Neighbors and friends arrived, organizing into search parties to comb the surrounding streets and wooded areas. Mike's sister Rachel arrived with tears streaming down her face. "I called Mom and Dad," she told Mike, hugging him tightly. "They're catching the first flight out tomorrow morning." Mike barely heard her. He kept replaying those 2 minutes in his head. If only he hadn't gone for the ice cream. If only he'd kept Lily by his side. If only they'd gone home after the swings like he'd originally planned. By midnight, The police had expanded the search area and issued an Amber Alert. Lily's photo flashed on highway signs, local TV stations, and cell phones across the state. Tips began pouring in, each one raising Mike's hopes only to dash them moments later. We got a report of a girl matching Lily's description at a gas station 30 miles west. Officer Chen told Mike around 2 a.m. We're sending officers to check security footage now. Mike insisted on going with them, unable to sit still while others searched for his daughter. Rachel drove him, neither of them speaking, both jumping every time Mike's phone rang. The gas station footage showed a different child, not Lily. Mike slumped against the wall, exhaustion battling with adrenaline. You should try to rest, Rachel said softly. You need your strength for tomorrow. But how could he rest? Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lily's empty swing, moving slightly in the breeze. Days blurred together. The police set up a command center in the community hall. Mike gave interviews to local news, then regional news, then national news as Lily's story spread. His parents arrived looking older than he remembered, their faces etched with worry for their granddaughter. This isn't your fault, his father told him gruffly, unused to offering comfort but trying his best. You're a good dad. We'll find her. A week passed. The search area expanded to neighboring states. The FBI joined the investigation, bringing in specialists in child abduction cases. They combed through Mike's life, Lily's life, looking for any connection to someone who might take her. What about Lily's mother? An agent asked carefully, reviewing notes in a thick folder. Nicole died 3 years ago, Mike said, his voice flat from repeating the same information countless times. Car accident. It was just me and Lily since then. And Nicole's family? Her parents live in Arizona. They visit twice a year. They're devastated about Lily. The agent nodded, making another note. Any custody disputes before Nicole's death? Anyone who might feel they have a claim to Lily? Mike shook his head. Nicole and I were on good terms. Co-parenting worked well for us even after the divorce. The investigation continued, but as weeks turned to months, the number of officers assigned to Lily's case dwindled. The command center closed. The media moved on to newer stories. The FBI agent handling the case began calling less frequently. Mike refused to give up. He drained his savings account to hire private investigators. He created websites, social media pages, and plastered Lily's face on billboards across the country. He drove to check out possible sightings himself, sometimes traveling hundreds of miles on a moment's notice, only to return home hollow-eyed and silent. 6 months after Lily vanished, the police officially classified her case as a probable abduction, with no current leads. They promised to keep the case open, to follow up on any new information, but Mike could see in their eyes that they'd begun to doubt they would ever find her. The first year is crucial in these cases, a detective told him gently. But that doesn't mean we stop looking. Mike nodded, but inside something hardened. He would never stop looking. Not if it took the rest of his life. Somewhere out there was his daughter, and no matter what it took, he would bring her home. As he drove back to his empty house that night, past the darkened park where it all began, Mike made a silent promise to Lily, wherever she was. I will find you, he whispered. No matter how long it takes, I will find you. He didn't know then that how long would be 6 years. 6 years of searching, hoping, and never giving up. 6 years before he would discover a truth so shocking, it would leave him frozen in disbelief. The house had never felt right after Lily disappeared. Mike Holloway walked through the front door, dropping his keys into the bowl by the entryway, a habit from when he needed to rush out for school pickups and playground visits. He paused, as he always did, at the wall of photos. Lily's school picture from 2nd grade. Lily at the beach building a sandcastle. Lily and Mike at the zoo, both making monkey faces at the camera. His footsteps echoed in the quiet house as he made his way to the kitchen. On the refrigerator, held by alphabet magnets, hung a calendar. Every day Mike crossed off another square. Today marked exactly 2 years since his daughter vanished. The phone rang, startling him from his thoughts. Any news? It was Rachel, his sister, calling as she did every week. Nothing new, Mike answered, his voice carrying the weight of 2 years of disappointment. Detective Wilson says they're still following up on a tip from Tennessee, but he didn't sound hopeful. Rachel sighed on the other end. Are you still coming for dinner on Sunday? The kids miss their uncle. Mike looked at the calendar again. I'll try, Rach, I promise. He would try, but he knew how these anniversaries went. The crushing weight of memories. The endless spiral of what-ifs. The hours spent staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of that day. Sleep would be impossible tonight. After hanging up, Mike made his way to the room at the end of the hall. Lily's bedroom door was decorated with a colorful sign spelling her name. Inside, everything remained exactly as it had been on her 8th birthday. The unmade bed where she'd jumped up excitedly that morning. The stuffed animals arranged on her bookshelf. The half-finished art project on her desk. Some people thought it was unhealthy keeping her room like this. His parents certainly did. "You need to move forward," his mother had said during their last strained visit 6 months ago. "This isn't good for you, Michael." But how could he explain? This room wasn't just a shrine to his missing daughter. It was a promise. When Lily came home, she would find everything waiting for her, just as she left it. She would know he never gave up, never stopped believing she would return. Mike sat on the edge of Lily's small bed and pulled a notebook from the nightstand drawer. Inside were pages of notes, leads, names of people who might have seen something that day at the park. He'd become something of a detective himself over the past 2 years, much to the frustration of the actual police working the case. "You're interfering with our investigation," Detective Wilson had told him more than once. But as the official investigation slowed to a crawl, Mike's own search had only intensified. The doorbell rang, pulling Mike from his thoughts. He wasn't expecting anyone. Opening the front door, he found Bill Chen, no longer in uniform but still carrying the same kind eyes from when he had responded to Mike's 911 call 2 years ago. "Thought you might want some company today," Bill said simply, holding up a pizza box. "I'm off duty, but I remember the dates. All of them." This had become their ritual. On the anniversary of Lily's disappearance, Bill would show up with food. Sometimes they talked about the case. Sometimes they just sat in silence. Either way, Mike was grateful not to be alone. As they ate pizza in the kitchen, Bill asked, "Have you thought any more about the foundation idea?" Mike nodded. 3 months ago, he'd started talking about establishing a foundation for missing children. It would be named after Lily, of course. A way to help other families going through the same nightmare. "I met with a lawyer last week," Mike said. "The paperwork's being filed. I'm using most of my savings, but..." He shrugged. "What else am I going to spend it on?" Bill nodded approvingly. "It's a good thing you're doing. Helping others while still looking for Lily. I keep thinking, what if every missing child had someone working this hard to find them? What if families had better resources, better support?" Mike stared at his half-eaten slice of pizza. Maybe then more kids would come home. After Bill left, Mike couldn't face the emptiness of the house again. He grabbed his jacket and car keys and drove to the park. He came here often, walking the same paths, sitting on the same bench where he'd last seen Lily swinging. Sometimes he imagined he could still hear her laugh carried on the breeze. An older woman approached, walking her small dog. She nodded at Mike, recognizing him as he recognized her. "Another regular at the park. Still looking for answers?" she asked gently. "Always," Mike replied. "My grandson went missing in '92, the woman said, surprising Mike with this new information. "He was gone for 4 years before we found him. Don't you ever let anyone tell you to give up hope?" Mike felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in months. "You found him? After 4 years?" The woman nodded, her eyes crinkling with the memory. "Living with his father in Canada. Different name, different life. But we found him." Mike walked back to his car with slightly lighter steps. 4 years. Someone had found their missing child after 4 years. He could do the same. The next morning, fueled by a new determination, Mike called the lawyer handling his foundation paperwork. "I want to speed things up," he told her. "Whatever it takes, whatever it costs. I need to get this foundation running as soon as possible." 3 months later, the Lily Hope Foundation officially opened its doors in a small office space downtown. Mike had quit his job as an accountant to run it full-time, using his savings and a small inheritance from his grandfather to fund the first year of operations. Rachel helped part-time, managing the foundation's social media and organizing fundraising events. Even his parents, despite their continued urging that he move on, donated money to get the foundation started. The work was both heartbreaking and fulfilling. Mike met families in the depths of despair, newly missing children whose cases were still active, and long-term cases like his own, where leads had dried up but hope remained. He helped connect them with resources, private investigators who worked pro bono, media contacts, poster printing services, and support groups. And with each family he helped, each child they searched for, Mike looked for connections to Lily's case. Someone who might have seen something. A similar abduction method, a pattern that the police might have missed. At night, he would return to his quiet house, to Lily's untouched room, and update her on the day's work. "We helped the Thompsons get their story on the national news today," he would tell her empty room. "Their boy looks a little like you around the eyes. And the Martinez family, we found a witness who might have seen their daughter at a bus station in Ohio." Then always he would add, "I'm still looking for you too." Every single day. 3 years after Lily's disappearance, the foundation had grown. Mike hired a full-time assistant, a retired police officer named Roy who specialized in missing persons cases. They moved to a larger office, the walls covered with photos of missing children, found and still missing. Lily's photo held the place of honor above Mike's desk. School photos, age progressed to show what she might look like now at 11 years old. "We've got a new case," Roy announced one morning, dropping a file on Mike's desk. 10-year-old girl missing from her front yard. Police think she might have been taken by a non-custodial parent. Mike flipped open the file, studying the girl's photo. She had dark hair like Lily. So many of them did. Sometimes Mike would find himself staring at dark-haired children in grocery stores, at parks, wondering, "I'll call the family today," he said, "see what help they need." As he dialed the number, Mike felt the familiar mix of emotions. Sympathy for this new family entering the nightmare he knew so well. Determination to help them, and always, the hope that somehow this case might lead back to Lily. The girl's mother answered the phone, her voice raw from crying. "This is Mike Holloway from the Lily Hope Foundation," he said gently. "I understand your daughter is missing. I want you to know that you're not alone, and we're here to help in any way we can." As he spoke the words he'd said so many times before, he felt the weight of his own journey pressing down on him. 4 years had passed now. Lily would be 12. What would she look like? Would he even recognize her if he passed her on the street? That night, Mike attended a support group meeting for parents of missing children. He'd started the group through the foundation, but often found himself unable to offer the comfort others seemed to find there. Still, he went every week, listening to stories that echoed his own. "My mother-in-law called again," said one woman, a newcomer to the group whose son had been missing for 6 months. "She thinks I should start living again, whatever that means." How do you deal with family who just don't understand? Mike sighed. "It's hard. They're grieving too, in their own way. My parents." He paused, thinking of their last visit. How his father had suggested, not for the first time, that perhaps it was time to pack up Lily's things. They mean well, but unless you've lived through this, you can't really understand. After the meeting, Mike drove home in a heavy rain that matched his mood. 4 years. The milestones kept passing. Lily's birthdays, holidays, the day she should have started middle school. Each one a fresh wound. As he pulled into his driveway, headlights illuminated his front porch. Someone was sitting there, hunched against the rain. Mike approached cautiously. "Can I help you?" The figure looked up, revealing a teenage boy with hollow eyes that Mike recognized all too well. Tyler was. The lead in Riverdale had turned cold quickly. Mike had driven through the night, heart pounding with hope and fear, only to discover that the girl with the birthmark had moved away with her family just weeks earlier. No forwarding address. No one seemed to know where they'd gone. Another dead end. 2 more years passed like this. Moments of desperate hope followed by crushing disappointment. The Lily Hope Foundation grew, gaining national recognition for its work with families of missing children. Mike appeared on television shows, did interviews with newspapers, and spoke at conferences, always with the same dual purpose, to help other families and to keep Lily's face in the public eye. Today would have been Lily's 14th birthday. 6 years since she disappeared. 6 years of searching, of wondering, of keeping her room exactly as she had left it, pink walls and all. Mike sat at his kitchen table, a small cupcake with a single candle in front of him. He did this every year on her birthday, bought a cupcake, sang a quiet happy birthday, and made the same wish. Bring her home. His doorbell rang just as he blew out the candle. Probably Rachel, he thought. His sister never let him spend Lily's birthday alone, but when he opened the door, there was no one there. Just a plain manila envelope on the welcome mat. Mike looked up and down the street. No cars pulling away, no sign of whoever had left it. With a strange feeling in his stomach, he picked up the envelope and carried it inside. No name, no address, no stamp. Just a sealed envelope that someone had hand-delivered and left without waiting to see him. Inside was a single sheet of paper with an address written on it. Below the address was a photograph. Mike's hands began to shake as he stared at the image. It showed a teenage girl walking out of a school building. She wore a backpack and was laughing with another student beside her. Her hair was different, shorter, lighter, but the shape of her face, the set of her shoulders and there, visible on her wrist as she pushed her hair back, was a small, heart-shaped birthmark. "Lily," Mike whispered, touching the photo with trembling fingers. He flipped the photo over, looking for a note, a name, anything. Nothing. Just the address on the accompanying paper. A town called Pine Creek, about 300 miles away. Mike grabbed his phone, about to call Detective Wilson, who still checked in occasionally even though Lily's case had long since gone cold. Then he stopped. How many leads had turned into nothing over the years? How many times had the police told him to be patient, to let them handle it only for crucial time to be lost? No, this time he would go himself. Right now, he threw clothes into an overnight bag, called Rachel to tell her he'd be out of town for a few days, and then called Roy at the foundation. "I've got another lead," he said simply. Roy sighed on the other end of the line. "Mike, you know I support you 100%, but this one's different," Mike interrupted. "I have a photo, Roy, a recent one. It's her." "I know it's her." A pause. "Where?" "Pine Creek, about 5 hours from here." "Do you want me to come with you?" Roy asked. After all these years, he knew better than to try to talk Mike out of following a lead, no matter how slim the chance. "No. Stay and run the foundation. I'll call you when I get there." Mike hung up, grabbed the photo and the bag, and headed for his car. As he started the engine, he glanced at the photo again, propped against the dashboard. 6 years. His little girl was a teenager now. Would she even recognize him? Would she remember their life before that day at the park? The drive to Pine Creek was both too long and too short. Too long because every mile was another minute away from potentially finding Lily. Too short because he had no plan for what he would do when he got there. The address from the envelope turned out to be a small, well-kept house in a quiet neighborhood. Mike parked across the street, his heart hammering in his chest. What now, knock on the door? Call the local police? What if it wasn't Lily after all? As he sat there, paralyzed by indecision, the front door of the house opened. Mike ducked down, then cautiously peered over the dashboard. A woman in her 40s emerged, followed by a teenage girl with light brown hair. The girl from the photo, maybe Lily. Mike's breath caught in his throat. Even from this distance, he could see it. The way she moved. The tilt of her head as she talked to the woman. It was her. It had to be her. They got into a car in the driveway and pulled out, driving past Mike without a glance. He waited until they were a block away, then started his engine and followed at a distance. They drove to a shopping mall in the center of town. Mike parked and watched as they entered, then followed them inside, careful to stay far enough back that they wouldn't notice him. For nearly an hour, he trailed them through stores, his eyes never leaving the teenage girl. Every gesture, every laugh seemed both achingly familiar and strangely foreign. This was his daughter, but she had grown up without him. 6 years of her life that he had missed. Finally, they stopped at a food court. As they stood in line at a burger place, Mike found a table nearby where he could watch them. The woman was talking, smiling at the girl, acting for all the world like a normal mother with her normal daughter. Anger flared in Mike's chest. This woman had stolen his child, had taken 6 years from both of them, and here she was buying burgers like it was just another Tuesday. Before he could think it through, Mike was on his feet, walking toward them. The woman's back was to him, but the girl, Lily, it had to be Lily, was facing his direction, though her attention was on the menu board above them. Mike stopped a few feet away. "Lily?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman turned first, her eyes narrowing in confusion at the stranger addressing her daughter. But it was the girl's reaction that shattered Mike's world. She looked at him blankly. No recognition. No emotion except mild curiosity at being addressed by someone she didn't know. "Lily," Mike said again, louder this time, stepping closer. Now the woman moved slightly in front of the girl, "Excuse me," she said, her voice tight with concern. "I think you've mistaken my daughter for someone else." "She's not your daughter," Mike said, his voice rising. "Her name is Lily Holloway. She was taken from me 6 years ago. She has a heart-shaped birthmark on her right wrist." The girl's eyes widened and she instinctively covered her wrist with her other hand. "Please leave us alone," the woman said firmly. "Katie, let's go." Katie, they'd changed her name to Katie. "No, wait," Mike said desperately as they started to move away. "Lily, don't you remember me?" "I'm your dad. We lived on Maple Street. You had a pink bicycle with streamers on the handlebars. Your favorite stuffed animal was a panda named Poe." The girl, Lily Katie, looked frightened now. "Mom?" she said uncertainly, moving closer to the woman. "I'm calling security," the woman said, pulling out her phone. People were staring now. A mall security guard was already walking toward them, alerted by the commotion. "Please," Mike begged, his voice breaking. "Just look at this." He pulled out his wallet and removed a small worn photo. Lily on her 7th birthday, blowing out candles, her face lit with joy. The girl glanced at it, then back at him, her expression a mix of fear and confusion. "Is there a problem here?" the security guard asked, positioning himself between Mike and the woman and girl. "This man is harassing us," the woman said. "He's confused my daughter with someone else." "She's my daughter," Mike insisted. "She was abducted 6 years ago. I can prove it." The security guard looked skeptical but professional. "Sir, why don't we discuss this in the security office?" "Ma'am, you and your daughter are welcome to wait somewhere else while we sort this out." "I'm calling the police," the woman said. "Already dialing." Everything happened quickly after that. Local police arrived. Mike showed them photos of Lily, newspaper clippings about her disappearance, the Amber Alert that had been issued 6 years ago. He called Detective Wilson, who confirmed that Lily Holloway was still listed as a missing person. The woman, who identified herself as Helen Perry, insisted that Katie was her adopted daughter and had been for nearly 6 years. She had papers, she said. Everything was legal. The police chief, a woman named Officer Diaz, separated everyone and began taking statements. Mike sat in a small office at the mall, his mind racing. Adopted? How was that possible when Lily had been abducted? "Mr. Holloway," Officer Diaz said, entering the room. "We're taking this very seriously. We're going to need to verify some information, and if what you're saying is true, we'll need to conduct a thorough investigation. But right now we have a scared teenage girl and a woman with legal adoption paperwork." "I want a DNA test," Mike said firmly. "Right now," Officer Diaz nodded. "We're arranging that. But these things take time." 6 years, Mike interrupted. "I've already lost 6 years. I'm not losing another day." The officer's expression softened slightly. "I understand. We're contacting the FBI since this involves a potential interstate kidnapping. They'll want to talk to you about how you received the information that led you here." The anonymous envelope. Mike had almost forgotten about it in the rush of finding Lily. "I don't know who sent it," he admitted. "It was just left at my door this morning." Officer Diaz made a note. "That's unusual. We'll need to find out who sent it and why." The next few hours were a blur. Mike called Rachel and Roy, telling them Lee's case file and beginning a new investigation, known for 6 years. That's no. Pine Creek was nothing like the bustling city Mike had come from. The main street consisted of family-owned businesses with hand-painted signs. People nodded and smiled at strangers. Under different circumstances, he might have found it charming. But now, as he rented a small apartment on a month-to-month lease, all Mike could think about was how this quiet town had been hiding his daughter for 6 years. Week had passed since the DNA results confirmed what he already knew in his heart. The girl known as Katy Perry was his, Lily. The FBI investigation was moving slowly, tracking down former employees of New Beginnings Family Services, the now-defunct adoption agency that had somehow turned his abducted daughter into someone else's legally adopted child. Mike spent his days in meetings with investigators, lawyers, and child psychologists, all trying to determine the best way forward. The question of custody loomed large. Helen Perry had raised Lily, or Katie as she knew herself, for 6 years as a single mother. By all accounts, she had been loving and attentive. She had attended school plays, nursed fevers, helped with homework, and shaped the girl Lily had become, and she claimed to have had no idea that the child she adopted had been stolen. "The psychologist thinks we should arrange a supervised meeting," Agent Torres told Mike during one of their daily check-ins. A neutral location with the therapist present. Very casual, no pressure, just a chance for Lily to meet you in a controlled environment. When? Mike asked, heart racing at the prospect. Tomorrow, if you're up for it. We've already discussed it with Ms. Perry and Lily. They've agreed. Mike gripped the edge of the table. Yes, of course, what should I bring? What should I say? Agent Torres's expression softened slightly. Just be yourself. Don't overwhelm her with information or expectations. This is just about establishing a connection. The therapist will guide the conversation. Mike spent the night pacing his small rented apartment, rehearsing what he would say, worrying about what he would wear, agonizing over every detail. Should he bring photos of their life before? Would that help her remember or just confuse her more? Should he mention the birthmark or would that make her self-conscious? By morning, he had barely slept, but adrenaline kept him alert as he drove to the family counseling center where the meeting would take place. The building was low and modern, with colorful artwork on the walls that failed to disguise its clinical purpose. Mike arrived 30 minutes early, then sat in his car trying to calm his racing heart. After 6 years of imagining their reunion, the reality was nothing like he'd pictured. Inside, a receptionist directed him to a comfortable room with couches instead of chairs, plants in the corners, and soft lighting. Dr. Chen, the child psychologist who had been working with Lily, greeted him warmly. Mr. Holloway, thank you for coming. I know this is a difficult situation for everyone involved. Mike nodded, too nervous to speak. Lily and Miss Perry will be here shortly. I've explained to Lily that you believe you're her biological father, and that we're doing tests to confirm this. She knows this is just a casual meeting to get acquainted. But the DNA already confirmed it, Mike said. She is my daughter. Dr. Chen nodded. Yes, but we're being careful about how we present information. Right now, Lily knows her name was once Lily Holloway, and that you are the man who says he's her father. We haven't yet told her about the abduction or the questions surrounding her adoption. That's too much at once. Mike wanted to argue, but was interrupted by a knock on the door. Dr. Chen opened it, and there they were. Helen Perry looking nervous but composed, and beside her Lily, his daughter, 14 years old now, taller than he'd imagined she'd be. Her dark hair lightened to a honey brown, but with the same eyes he'd seen in his dreams for 6 years. Hello, Dr. Chen said warmly. Katie, this is Mr. Holloway. Lily, Katie, looked at him warily, staying close to Helen. Hi, she said quietly. Hi, Mike replied, his voice thick with emotion. He wanted to rush to her, to hug her and never let go, but he forced himself to stay seated to remember what Dr. Chen had told him about not overwhelming her. Why don't you both have a seat? Dr. Chen suggested. Mr. Holloway, would you like to tell Katie a little about yourself? Mike took a deep breath. I'm from Westport, about 5 hours from here. I run a foundation that helps find missing children. I like hiking and old movies. I make terrible pancakes, but pretty good spaghetti. He was babbling, he knew, but he couldn't seem to stop. This was his daughter sitting across from him, looking at him like he was a complete stranger. Katie nodded, still looking uncertain. She glanced at Helen, who gave her an encouraging nod. I like hiking too, she offered. And spaghetti. Mike smiled, seizing on this tiny connection. Do you put cheese on yours? You used to like it with lots of cheese when you were little. The moment the words left his mouth, he regretted them. Dr. Chen had warned him not to push memories or create expectations. Katie frowned slightly. I don't remember that. An awkward silence fell. Dr. Chen stepped in smoothly. Katie, Mr. Holloway hasn't seen you since you were 8 years old. He's been looking for you for a long time. Why? Katie asked, looking directly at Mike for the first time. The question caught him off guard. Because you're my daughter, he said simply. Because I love you. Katie looked down at her hands. I don't remember you, she said quietly. I don't remember being Lily. Mike felt his heart breaking all over again. That's okay, he said, though it wasn't, not really. It's not your fault. The meeting continued for about an hour, with Dr. Chen gently guiding the conversation. They talked about Katie's school, her friends, her interest in photography. Mike shared a little about the foundation, careful not to mention that he had started it to find her. The conversation was stilted, full of pauses and careful words. As they were getting ready to leave, Mike took a chance. I brought something for you, he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. You don't have to take it if you don't want to. Katie hesitated, then accepted the box. Inside was a silver bracelet with a small charm, a swing set. You used to love swings, Mike explained, his voice soft with memory. You said they made you feel like you could touch the clouds. For a moment, something flickered in Katie's eyes, confusion or perhaps the faintest glimmer of recognition. But then it was gone, replaced by polite gratitude. It's pretty, she said, putting it back in the box without trying it on. Thank you. After they left, Mike sat alone in the counseling room trying to process the meeting. His daughter was alive, healthy, seemingly well-adjusted. That was what mattered, he told himself. Not that she didn't remember him. Not that she called another woman Mom. Not that she went by a different name now. She was alive. But as he drove back to his rented apartment, the emptiness in his chest told a different story. Finding her alive wasn't enough. He wanted his daughter back. Not just physically, but the connection they had shared. The 6 years of memories before she disappeared, and the 6 years they had lost since. The days that followed fell into a new routine. 3 times a week, Mike would meet with Katie at the counseling center, always with Dr. Chen present, sometimes with Helen there as well. Slowly, painfully slowly, Katie began to relax around him, to ask questions about her life before Pine Creek, to show curiosity about the man who claimed to be her real father. Meanwhile, the FBI investigation continued. Agent Torres kept Mike updated on their findings, which were troubling and confusing in equal measure. We've interviewed 6 former employees of New Beginnings, Torres told him during one of their meetings. None of them remember Lily specifically, but several have confirmed that the agency's director, a man named Gregory Wells, sometimes brought in children who weren't properly documented. What does that mean? Mike asked. It means they weren't surrendered through proper channels. No paperwork from the birth parents, no court involvement. They just appeared, and Wells had stories about where they came from. Abandoned, surrendered privately, that sort of thing. Mike leaned forward. So this Wells person was trafficking children? Stealing them and putting them up for adoption? Torres nodded grimly. It's starting to look that way. We've identified 3 other cases similar to Lily's. Children reported missing who ended up being adopted through New Beginnings. Where is Wells now? Mike demanded. Have you arrested him? That's the problem. Gregory Wells died 3 years ago. Heart attack. We're trying to track down his associates, anyone who might know how he acquired these children or why. The news was frustrating, but Mike clung to the belief that at least they were getting closer to the truth, and in the meantime, his relationship with Katie was improving incrementally. She had started wearing the bracelet he gave her. She had asked to see photos of herself as a younger child. Small steps, but progress. Then came the breakthrough. 1 month after Mike had arrived in Pine Creek, Agent Torres called him in the middle of the night. We found something, Torres said, his voice tense with urgency. You need to come to the station right away. When Mike arrived, bleary-eyed but alert, Torres led him to a conference room where Officer Diaz was waiting with a thin, nervous-looking man Mike had never seen before. This is Peter Hoffman, Torres explained. He was Gregory Wells' assistant at New Beginnings. He's come forward with information. Hoffman nodded, his hand. The courthouse in Pine Creek was a stately brick building that had stood for over a century. Mike had driven past it countless times during his 3-month stay in town, but today was the first time he would step inside. Today was the custody hearing. He adjusted his tie in the rearview mirror, trying to calm his racing heart. His lawyer, Andrea Wright, had prepared him for this day, but nothing could truly ready him for the reality of it. A judge would decide his daughter's future. Remember, Andrea had told him during their final preparation meeting yesterday, the judge is concerned with one thing only, what's in Lily's best interest. Not what's fair to you, not what's fair to Helen Perry, but what will be best for Lily going forward. Mike understood this in theory, but in his heart, he struggled with the idea that anyone could think it wasn't in Lily's best interest to be with her real father. As he walked up the courthouse steps, he spotted Rachel waiting for him. His sister had flown in yesterday to support him through the hearing, leaving her husband to watch their children back home. You ready for this? She asked, giving him a tight hug. As ready as I'll ever be, Mike replied. Inside, they met Andrea in the hallway outside the courtroom. She was reviewing papers from her briefcase, her expression serious. Any news? Mike asked. Andrea looked up. Nothing's changed since yesterday. Both psychologists will testify. Dr. Chen, who's been working with Lily, and Dr. Mason, who evaluated both households. The FBI agent will explain the circumstances of the abduction and fraudulent adoption. Helen Perry's lawyer will argue for maintaining primary custody with visitation rights for you. Will argue for primary custody with a gradual transition period and visitation for Ms. Perry. Mike nodded. This was the strategy they had settled on after weeks of discussion. Initially, Mike had wanted to take Lily home immediately, back to her real home, her real life. But after 2 months of supervised visits and careful conversations, he had come to accept that an abrupt change would be traumatic for her. She had built a life in Pine Creek. She had friends, school activities, and most significantly, she had formed a deep bond with Helen Perry. The fact that this bond was built on lies, on an abduction, orchestrated by his former mother-in-law, and facilitated by a corrupt adoption agency, didn't change the fact that it existed. And Lily? Mike still struggled with what to call his daughter. She had told him she was trying to get used to being called Lily again. But 14 years of being Katie wasn't easily erased. Will she have to testify? The judge will speak with her privately, Andrea explained. It's standard in custody cases involving older children. The judge will consider her wishes, but remember, she's 14. Her preference isn't the only factor. Before they could discuss further, Helen Perry arrived with her lawyer. She looked as nervous as Mike felt, her normally composed appearance slightly disheveled. Their eyes met across the hallway. These two people who loved the same child, caught in an impossible situation neither had created. After a moment of hesitation, Helen walked over to Mike, her lawyer trailing behind with a concerned expression. "I wanted to say something before we go in," Helen said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "Whatever happens in there today, I want you to know that I never knew. I never suspected. If I had known she was your daughter, that she had been taken from you." Her voice caught. "I would never have been part of that." Mike believed her. After 3 months of investigations, interviews, and evidence gathering, it had become clear that Helen Perry had been as much a victim of deception as he was, though in a vastly different way. "I know," he said simply. Helen nodded, relieved. "And I want you to know that I've tried to prepare her whatever the judge decides. I've told her that you're her father, that you love her, that you never gave her up. I've told her that none of this is her fault." "Thank you," Mike said, genuinely grateful. Helen had been remarkably cooperative throughout this ordeal, putting Lily's well-being above her own heartbreak. A door opened at the end of the hallway, and Mike's breath caught as Lily appeared, accompanied by a court officer. She looked small and solemn in a blue dress, her hair pulled back with the butterfly clip Helen had given her for her birthday last month. When she saw them, she hesitated, then walked over, standing awkwardly between the two adults who each considered themselves her parent. "The judge wants to see me first," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Helen smoothed a strand of hair behind Lily's ear, a gesture of maternal comfort that made Mike's chest ache with 6 years of lost moments. "Just be honest, sweetheart. Tell the judge how you feel. There's no wrong answer." "Your mom's right," Mike added, using the term deliberately, acknowledging Helen's role in Lily's life. "Just speak from your heart." Lily nodded, gave them both a shaky smile, and followed the court officer back through the door. The hearing itself was closed to the public, with only the parties directly involved allowed inside. As promised, Dr. Chen testified first, explaining Lily's psychological state and the progress she'd made in therapy. She spoke of Lily's growing connection to Mike, the fragments of memory that had begun to resurface, but also of her deep attachment to Helen and her life in Pine Creek. "In my professional opinion," Dr. Chen concluded, "severing either of these relationships entirely would be detrimental to Lily's emotional well-being. She needs both of these adults in her life." Dr. Mason, who had evaluated both households, concurred. "Both Mr. Holloway and Ms. Perry provide loving, stable homes. Both are capable parents who genuinely want what's best for Lily." Agent Torres testified next, laying out the facts of the case in stark, unflinching terms. He explained how Eleanor Winters had exploited her position as a board member of the adoption agency to arrange her granddaughter's abduction, how Gregory Wells had facilitated the kidnapping and falsified documents to make the adoption appear legitimate, and how Helen Perry had been deliberately selected as the adoptive parent. "There is no evidence," Torres emphasized, "that Miss Perry was aware of any wrongdoing. All indications are that she believed she was legally adopting a child in need. Mike testified about the day Lily disappeared, the 6 years he spent searching for her, and his hopes for rebuilding their relationship. He acknowledged that an immediate, complete return to their former life was no longer possible. "I understand that Lily has a life here now," he said, looking directly at the judge. "She has a second mother who loves her. I'm not trying to erase that. I just want my daughter back in my life. I want to be her father again." When Helen took the stand, her testimony was equally heartfelt. "I've raised Katie, Lily, for 6 years, believing she was legally my daughter. I've loved her with my whole heart. But I understand now that her life with me began with a terrible wrong done to Mr. Holloway. I don't want to compound that wrong by keeping them apart." By the time all testimony concluded, the afternoon was waning. The judge announced she would take some time to consider all she had heard, including her private conversation with Lily, before rendering a decision. Court would reconvene in 1 hour. Mike spent that hour pacing the courthouse hallway, too anxious to sit still. Rachel tried to distract him with stories about his nieces and nephews, but he could barely focus. His entire future, and more importantly Lily's, hung in the balance of what the judge would decide. When they were finally called back into the courtroom, Mike felt lightheaded with anxiety. Helen Perry looked equally tense, sitting stiffly on the opposite side of the aisle. The judge, a stern-faced woman in her 60s named Judge Harmon, studied her notes for a long moment before speaking. "This is an unprecedented case," she began. "We have a child who was abducted through the machinations of her maternal grandmother, placed for adoption through fraudulent means, and raised for 6 years by an adoptive mother who was unaware of these criminal acts. We have a biological father who never gave up his rights and who has searched tirelessly for his daughter. And we have a 14-year-old girl caught between 2 homes, 2 identities, and 2 parents, who both clearly love her deeply." The judge looked up, her expression softening slightly. "I have listened carefully to the testimony presented today, including my private conversation with the minor child. It is clear to me that both Mr. Holloway and Ms. Perry are fit parents who want what is best for Lily. It is equally clear that Lily cares deeply for both of them." Mike held his breath, his hands clenched tightly in his lap. "The law in cases of wrongful adoption is clear," Judge Harmon continued. "When a child has been abducted and then placed for adoption through fraudulent means, the adoption is void. Legal custody reverts to the biological parent who never surrendered their rights." Mike felt a surge of relief, but it was tempered by the judge's next words. "However, this court must consider not only the letter of the law, but the best interests of the child. Lily Holloway has been through an extraordinary ordeal. First, the trauma of abduction, then the discovery that her entire life for the past 6 years was built on deception. To simply uproot her again and send her back to a life she barely remembers would risk further psychologic." The judge paused, looking directly at Mike. "Mr. Holloway, in our private conversation, Lily told me that she is beginning to remember.